This is part 2 of our Veterans History Project Oral History with Mr. William D. Walsh, Jr. Today is Sunday, April 22nd, 2007. Mr. Walsh, you just finished talking about getting ready. You're in the staging area in the tent city, and then you were going to be going on to the ship, the Ben McNee, I believe was the name of the ship. And tell us more about those the days right up leading to D-Day there.
Well, it was sort of a know-nothing day. A couple of days there, we couldn't go anywhere, and all was given to us was that money, a few dollars, fresh money, and of course we were filled in on what was going on, and a lot of it was handled by, I was in the mortar section, and the mortar sergeant, staff sergeant, he was just like a brother to me, and what information he'd give to us, and I didn't hear anybody say, "Oh, this is going to be tough now, and you got to be careful," and all that stuff. It just 1, 2, 3. This is it, and that was it.
Off you go. So you were trained as a mortarman, sir?
Yes.
So you had all kinds of specialized training?
I was in the mortar section even in the 80s.
So you knew all about that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good. So then it's probably about June 5th or so, June 4th, June 5th, you're in the staging area.
Oh, well, we were down there before that.
Okay.
We were down there a couple of days before that, the Ben McCree.
Mm-hmm.
I know one time they opened the side of the ship. They could open where they put supplies in.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the guys were swimming, jumping out there and swimming, and they climbed back in the boat. They have ropes out there and climb back in on them. So that was more training for them. And the water was, the water did get rough.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a day or two where they weren't so rough. So we were down there more than maybe a week or so. I know the 5th was scheduled. The 5th of June was scheduled, and we were getting ready to go out, and they called it off on account of rough weather. But it started getting real overcast, like it was the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Thursday, how bad it was.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere was cloudy, and it was kind of chilly. And then that first day, I don't know how we passed the time away, but it didn't seem heavy. And there was, the officers were right there on the same boat with us. And it was interesting to see how they eat aboard the ship. All those tables have borders on them, so the food don't fall off them. And the British, we had British food was different. And then June the 6th came along.
Okay.
That was we figured this was going to be it because the last one was called off. They were told us it was called off. We went out.
Are all the Rangers on the Ben McCree, 2nd Battalion?
What's that?
Are all the Rangers on the Ben McCree?
No, there was 2 boats.
2 boats? Okay.
The 2nd Rangers was on the one Ben McCree, and the 5th was on another boat.
Mm-hmm.
There was 2 boats.
And the Ben McCree, they all you guys were all loaded on board. Did you have to stay on that boat a couple of days? I guess you had to in advance of D-Day, right?
Yeah, we We was on a few days.
And then you recall pulling out of port?
Yeah, pulled out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, first, let's see here. In Plymouth, there was these small landing craft that about 20 men could fit in.
Mm-hmm.
We had, I think, 8 of them. They had to put them on the Ben McCree. So they took us down to the dock there, and everybody got on those crafts, and the craft must have pushed us on the ship. I don't recall just how that happened. I know getting on that down on the shore. I remember getting back in that boat with about 20 guys. They had little seats on the side, you know. And the boat faced that way. There was seats along the side. You know, it'd be above your head. You sit below the top of the boat for, I guess, protection.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it was nighttime. It was about 4 in the morning when the thing was on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I could backtrack a bit. When we was on that boat one time, when it was the 5th was lined up to go.
Mm-hmm.
The 5th of the day the 5th, they took us out and they showed us these barrage balloons.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you had them on your ship, didn't you? And it was really a mess up there. I never saw so many boats up there. They were all over the place. He was traveling between me.
Do you remember your uniform, your package? You must have had a backpack. You must have everything packed and ready to go. Would that be correct? As a ranger?
We didn't have any pack.
No. What were you carrying with you when you left? What did you have?
I had a gas mask.
Mm-hmm.
And then the uniform was had been put in some kind of a form of chemical.
Mm-hmm.
And they were real hot, uncomfortable things. And but when I was talking about these barrage balloons,
Yes, sir.
they took us up to show what's going on, you know. And they had a couple of German planes fly around them.
Oh, did they really?
To make us see what they look like. It's pretty hard to get all those kind of men, tell them all this stuff, you know.
Yes.
I think, how many was 165,000 men went in there?
A lot of people.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was an experience, seeing that, going out there and seeing what was going on. Then we, I don't know, they must have docked out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the 6th, we went in around 4 in the morning. It was still dark, and we had to get on this landing craft. It was attached to the boat. We had to crawl. We didn't have to crawl any ladders or anything. We just had to get up over the top, jump up and jump in them, you know. And then it was like the 4th of July up there. There's firing. All kind of firing going on. I guess the battleship Texas was firing shells. There's a couple other gunboats firing. So we saw that going on before we got in that landing craft. But before it was dry run. You saw those planes flying around.
Mm-hmm.
So you ready to go in now? First of all, when you get in them little crafts, you circle, gather each one, add another one to it. You know.
Okay.
Start out with one boat, and you get 2, then you get 3, and you're still going around in a circle, and then you start out into your point of the point's marked out for you where to go. Now, we didn't know what. I didn't know the name or anything of All I knew is we were headed out. We were headed to the beaches, you know.
Yeah. How long are you in those boats for circling? You remember how long that took?
Well, it started getting daylight,
Okay.
and then we started parallel with the shore,
Okay.
and we're all sitting in there, and the morning we were to go in, they gave us pancakes.
Okay.
That's because it wouldn't make us seasick. So I had pancakes, and then they gave each man a paper bag. That was in case you throw up, you have a bag, a puke bag, you call them.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of guys I saw use them, but I didn't see anybody seasick on there, really. And we're rolling down, and it seemed kind of rough. The water was really rough, and after a while, you get curious, you know. So I stood up and looked out, and I could see we was going parallel with us. And they kept on going, and next time I looked out, they were firing at us. You could see the water. The bullets were jumping on the water, you know, coming toward us, you know. We were going this way, and the shore's there. The shells coming this way. And none of them seemed to hit anybody. The boats weren't hit or nothing. It must have been too far out yet, for some reason. They kept on going, and of course everybody knows the history that the boats were going the wrong way, and they corrected that. I didn't even know that. I didn't know it was going wrong. Nobody told me that it was going wrong. So we kept on going down there, and then we started into the shore, into the point. And you can see the point there and everything. We knew what we was looking for. And Captain Masney was captain of the company, and I was in his boat, 83. And he said it seemed that the coxswains were a little jittery going in there. And I'm not saying my boat, because Masney made him feel good. He had everybody calm, you know. And he got close to the cliffs, and he yelled to that coxswain. He says, "Come on, now, take it easy now. We got lots of time to get in there." And some of the boats were hitting shore too soon, and the guys were jumping out in the water. In our boat, he kept telling the guy, "We got lots of time, lots of time." Finally, the cliffs are right like there, and he says, "Let's go." We're straight in there, and you could hear the boat scratching the shore, you know. And he got up on the shore and dropped the landing door, and he fired those rockets, and they all went in, went out in there, and we walked off that boat, run off the boat, didn't get our feet wet. That's how good he was. Man, that guy is really good. He didn't have any, and then we looked around, the boats are gone already. He must have had put him in high gear or something. Well, he was gone. But I give him credit, he really did the job. A lot of those guys were all wet. And some of those rockets didn't go up. They were too far out, you know. So we all run off, and this Thompson is the gunner, and I'm the assistant gunner. And we run down the shore. It's a very narrow shore, and the shell holes all over the place. The Air Force went in there and bombed that place. And they had holes really about as deep as this house, around this floor. And we got down quite a piece. We knew that our men were here. They're going to climb the cliffs. We knew if we fired the rockets up our mortars there, you're going to hit them. So we had to run down that way as far as we could go and jumped in one of them shell holes. And we started firing our mortars. We got about 4 or 5 out. And that's our guy. I thought what we could do is keep those guys, Germans, from coming down here. Force them back that way with the shells. And it seemed the water was, I looked up back at the water. It was coming like Niagara, like I tell everybody, coming like Niagara Falls. You ever been to Niagara Falls?
Yes, sir.
That's a mass of water coming down there. That's the way that looked like to me. And I jumped out there as quick as I could, and he jumped out too. And in front of me, I could see shells, bullets hitting the ground, kicking them up like that, you know. And I couldn't stop. I had to run right straight into it. It got me right in the back of the head. And I went down, you know, like a baseball bat hit me in the head. And Thompson, he kept on going. He got up. And I said, I put my hand up there, my helmet was thrown all over the place. I fell up there and the blood running all over the place. And I looked around, Captain Block, that's a medic captain. He had 2 men with him. They were hugging the ground back there. And the water's coming in. And I said, I'm hit. And Captain Block said, come on, crawl over here. Crawl over this way. I crawled over there maybe from here to that window over there. I guess about that far. I crawled over there. Those medics took care of me right away. And they bandaged me all up. And they put a little, I don't know what string, I guess it was, over my neck. You know, had all kind of information on it. You know, take care of this guy, or watch out, he's got this kind of a wound or something, you know. And he says, and there's, over the cliff there's a big rock. Get behind that rock. That'll save you. I crawl over that rock. And the medic that helped bandage me, his name is Smith. South. Yeah. And he's very active in the Ranger Association. And, well, of course, they try to put a flag up, a Red Cross flag. They put holes in that thing. Mm-hmm. And then as I was looking up from that rock, there's like a overhang, and there's 3 guys there. One guy's named Otto. He was wounded. He was laying there. He was really in pain. He got hit in the abdomen. He's like delirious. And there's one guy I really didn't know, and the other guy was from my company. He was wounded. So what we did, every soldier got a morphine shot, capsule. That was a good thing. Everybody had one. So we pitched them in together and administered to Otto to relieve him. And then we had these Mae Wests, you know, that we inflated them and made a mattress and had to lay on that. And he was really in bad shape. So, and I was sort of getting goofy and dizzy. And but I didn't have severe pain for some reason. It didn't seem like I had severe pain. I guess I was numb back here. And so one particular happened down the shore there. It must have been the next day that the tide was out a little bit, and there a duck was sitting. You know those ducks we used Did anybody ever tell you that? What
Oh, the duck, the DEs.
with the ladder on it?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
There was one of them ducks laying there, disabled. It was ruined. I said, well, maybe there's ammunition in that thing. So I got down there and looked in. There's nothing, just a shell of a truck, you know. And that was the fellow that was on that ladder. Just died last week.
Did he?
He's from Oil City, Pennsylvania. And Stuyvesant is his name. And you can imagine him up on that ladder, waving all over the place, you know. So I gave that up. And then I stayed with these other 3 guys. And, you know, you get restless. You sleep a lot, you know, and you're out of it for a while and this and that. One time I said, I'm going to walk up this way, up towards there. You know, you see the picture of that point?
Mm-hmm.
The big, well, I started walking up that direction. And I want to make this turn. Here's about 20 wounded Rangers laying there. And they're talking and all that. And there's a guy standing there talking to them. He looks like he's in good shape. Here's Sergeant Ryan. He's a platoon leader. He had been up there, and he'd been up there, we'll say a day and a half or so, a day and 2, you know. I say a day. Then he came down the second day to see if any of his men were down there, probably, and see if he could bring anybody up there to help him. And he was telling them how bad it was, how rough it was getting. He said, now, if they make one more counterattack, we're going into the water. He said, it's really bad up there. And he said, I got to get back up there. I said, he's gone. You know, he went back up. And that was, and then all these other guys, there were some were really bad. All kind of bandages, every kind of thing you can imagine. And I was getting so like I could hardly move my hand, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And one time while we was there, they tried to send a boat in with supplies. And it was so rough they couldn't get in. They got almost there, but they had to get back. Then the next day, they brought a landing craft. Must have been big as this house. You put a couple trucks in it. They brought that in and took all the wounded and the prisoners out. And that's one thing that reminded me to tell you about the prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
This is about I don't know just when it was, but they brought 20 prisoners down from the cliffs. And I got to see them. And you and I was just that close to the prisoners. And in my opinion of those, they all looked old. I didn't see a young guy there at all. They all look old. And you see uniformed soldiers, they had them big coats on. Man, they didn't look like any soldiers to me. They looked like, I wouldn't say bums, but they looked like they were through something. They must have been, that shelling that the Air Force put on there, they must have had them dizzy up there. And they brought them down, and they had that big ship there to take them out. So they loaded them on, it's a landing craft, like. They put them on, and they put all us wounded soldiers in there.
How many days after D-Day was that?
I'd say that was the 3rd day.
And did they keep you on the beach area there for those few days?
I was down there, just the 3 of us. We didn't know anybody else was down there.
Yeah.
Until I investigated.
Until you investigated.
And I saw 20 around the curve.
So you were able to stay up high on the beach to avoid the tide. They moved you up to a spot on the beach area underneath Pointe.
I never did. I was up close enough to the cliff for protection.
Yes.
And not get wet.
Good. Very good.
Yeah.
And you hung in there for those couple of days.
Yeah.
Great.
And I tried to. I went to that Well, that duck, I went up to see that duck.
That's when you saw the duck.
And I
Yeah.
saw those wounded soldiers. And I tried to take care of Otto,
Right.
you know. And then I went on this landing craft. Man, was it a huge craft. Like I say, you could put trucks on there.
Yeah.
And here they take me out to the Battleship, Texas.
That's where they took you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, oh, I forgot to tell you.
Okay.
You know when I got hit, my helmet went all over the place. It just went, it didn't, I'm not saying it was all in one piece, but it was gone, you know. It hit me like that. And I said, I think I better get a helmet. If I wanted to, and there was a helmet laying there. It was painted blue. Can you imagine that? And then I remembered, we took some engineers in with us, communication men,
Mm-hmm.
and they had blue helmets. There might have been 6 of them. Made the invasion with us at Pointe. And here I had a helmet. Of course, I couldn't wear it because I carried it. I figured you got to keep your equipment, you know.
Mm.
So on the Battleship Texas, I get on with all those guys. I have a blue helmet. I look like I'm a Navy. But as soon as we went down in the bottom, in one of the holds of the ship. It's all metal. There's no furniture in there or anything. Just a room of metal, and you can hear them shells. When they go off, the whole boat moves.
Mm.
And the sailor guys, they come down to see what's going on. They wanted to talk to us, you know, how's things going and all that sort of thing, you know. You know how guys do.
Mm-hmm.
And then they brought they brought a hospital ship alongside the ship with a big cross on it, and took us off. Took us to Southampton.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, we had Otto on that on the battleship. We got him evacuated to the battleship. They took him down to the operating room right away, but it's too late. We lost him. But he was really wounded bad. And I wanted to mention that. So then we go to Southampton, and they put us on the train with the beds in them.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I couldn't move my head then. I was on, the nurses were real good to me, you know. It took me to a hospital. It was, when I say hospital, you think of a building, but this was a tent city. Big tent.
Mm-hmm.
They wheeled me in, and they took me over to the operating table. It looked like a kitchen table. It was all rough stuff in there, in a tent, you know. They put me on their kitchen table with my head down, and he gave me a local, and his nurse standing there. He starts cutting. Sound like I always repeat, sounded like you cut an inner tube.
Mm.
You know how that sounds?
Mm-hmm.
That's how it sounded. They cut. And then he says, you're really lucky. He says, this thing being 1 more inch, you'd have been paralyzed.
Mm.
And he took it out and handed it to the nurse, and she dropped it in a steel bucket, and it went plunk. And after it was over, I says, oh, I missed a boat. I could have had a souvenir. Why didn't I ask for that thing? Mm-hmm. And so then they put me in a hospital bed, and got infected. And instead of healing real quick, it took me a while. July 4th, they gave me the Purple Heart, handed it to me.
Who gave it to you? Do you remember?
Somebody in the hospital.
Very nice.
I mailed it home. let's see, then I was recuperating. That infection held me up a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd say maybe by the end of July, I'm guessing, they put me on a ship
Mm-hmm.
to take me back to France.
Okay.
And I was, it was nice and warm. Everybody was laying out on deck, riding over there. And when they put us off on the shore, and there was a lot of equipment there and all of this stuff. And they marched me up a hill, sort of a hill, with a gang of guys, and to an apple orchard. And then they took me to a repo depot. And there must be 1,000 guys sitting there. And any movement you see was at lunchtime or something, supper, And then they try to keep the Rangers together. Like they had 2 or 3, then they get a couple more, and a couple more. Finally, they got 15 of us together. And an officer, lieutenant. He was a Ranger. So they put us on we was in the depot as Rangers, but they kept us in a section by ourselves. Finally, they said, it sounded like they were mad. They said, "Get these guys out of here. Get them on a truck. Get them out of here." They didn't say put them in the truck and take them to a certain place.
Mm.
They said, "Go and find the Rangers and get." That's dumb, wasn't it? They had no instructions. They told that lieutenant, "There's your men. Find them." So we got in the truck and we just went through all kind of little towns, and we go to a depot, another depot somewhere, and stay overnight or a day or so, then go to another depot, and time's going by. We're not finding the Rangers, and at that time, while I was traveling, our outfit was going to Brest.
Mm-hmm.
That's after the fact. I didn't know that. But you heard of the Fillet Gap?
Yes, sir.
Well, our depot was near there, and of course, I didn't just sit in one spot. I'd go out and a little walk around, walk places.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up to Mortain. Our depot was down on lower, and the Mortain was a higher ground. He and another fella, we walked up there to Mortain. And they must have had a terrific battle there. There was German propaganda all scattered all over the place. And ants, millions of ants up there. And that was one experience I had. And then another time, we went to the city of Paris, right down the main drag, all kind of trucks going down there, about 6 lanes in there. And then we went to Liège, Belgium, in a tent city in Liège, Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
No news of where's my outfit.
Still trying to track down the outfit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one time at Liège, they had it was outdoors in tent city. They had movies outside in a big screen, one of the big screen jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched a movie one night there. It was Then the next, one of the nice places that we stopped, we pulled into this little village. It's nighttime. You could tell it was, they said, you know, in those towns, they had a city square. They had buildings all around the square, and they had grass growing in the middle. So they pulled the truck up there and let us out, and we went, took our night wraps up and got in the grass and laid there and slept, you know. And next morning, all the villagers were standing around us.
Were they really?
They were amazed at it. Where did we come from? You know, in Bastogne. And the people were friendly. They'd come on to my house. You know, come to my house. And the officer, I know he had got to know one person there. You know, they didn't know before. And they had one little shop there, had an old recording machine in there. And we stayed there. I think we stayed there 2 days in Bastogne.
Mm-hmm.
And next day we all get in. We just had the one truck.
Mm-hmm.
So the truck driver drove down the road, and who did he run into? 5th Ranger Battalion. They were on the way home from Brest. They had just finished Brest, and they were coming to Arlon, Belgium. And we just luckily, the truck got there when they were there.
Mm-hmm.
So we went into the woods with the guys, got to know them, you know. 5th Ranger, they had all kind of souvenirs from Brest. They had German uniforms. They had flags big as this room, Nazi flags, big as this room, and all kind of junk, you know. And one guy, he went out, he got a 5-gallon can, fuel can, looked like a fuel can, and he went and, he's from the 5th Rangers. He was a real good friend. And he picked all the mushrooms he could pick, and he cooked them, and we all ate those mushrooms. And we thought that was great. And like I told once before in the book, there's a couple of those boys from the 5th Rangers. They told us they were in a youth movement, German youth movement in America when they were about 13 years old. Yeah, I don't know if you recall or read about that, but that was a big movement before we were in the war.
Mm-hmm.
The German Bund had these camps for kids. Mm-hmm. You know, that was a big thing then, especially in New Jersey and stuff around there. And well, I was surprised to hear that story. They were, of course, they changed. They were told to do that. You know, they didn't do that on their own. Join the German stuff.
These were a couple of the guys from the Ranger, the 5th.
Yeah, they were there when they were kids.
Mm-hmm.
Their parents sent them to camp. They thought, well, that's a good way to get them to camp. You know, I don't think anybody was really one way or the other in those days. You know, when they were.
When you all this time period before you ran into the 5th Rangers, you had come back to a replacement depot in the end of July back in France, and you made it through, even through Paris, and then to Liège, Belgium. What time of year was it that you ran into the 5th Rangers finally? Do you remember?
That would be the week before they got to Arlon.
Mm-hmm.
Arlon's where they established the new. You know, getting all the things together.
Okay.
You know, the next plan, the next jump forward. And it would be. I wish I could remember. Wait a minute, let me think about it. It would have to. I'd say, let's see, maybe October.
October. Okay. So October of 44?
It could be October.
Fall of 44?
Couldn't have been that far away.
Yeah. How are you feeling at this point? You had the bullet removed and you're feeling pretty good? You know, from the
Well, that
surgery?
healed up fairly good, but I still have a stiff neck.
Do you, from that? But you were back in, and you were moving, and you actually ran into these guys coming back from Brest. What happened at that point when you ran into the Fifth Ranger Battalion? What did you do then?
Well, they probably reported me in, and when we drove down to Arlon.
Okay,
Then I went to my company in the woods there.
you found them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We found them, they didn't find us. That's one thing I always want to say.
And
I mean, I missed a lot by not getting, it didn't get me connected.
how do you spell Arlon, Mr. Walsh? How do you spell
Arlon.
Arlon? And what happened at that point once you reconnected with your company? What happened then?
Well, then we were in the woods there, and we were introduced to half tracks with a 90 millimeter cannon,
Yeah.
and that was to be part of the Rangers. There's a big open field there that showed that to us. Yeah. The, there was really not too much being done there because that would be a rest area.
Okay.
This timing is, I'm thinking about August. That must have been, I'll say at the latest September.
September. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in September 1944. And so you meet up with the company, and it's in Arlon, it's an arrest area, and then plans are being made to continue to move forward.
Right.
Yeah, how did it feel to meet back up with your company? Pretty good?
It was good to see him again.
Yeah.
And when you come to think of it, there wasn't too much of a change. There were some replacements come in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say I don't know if I know there was replacements, but I don't know if there was anybody sent out.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about what happened then after Arlon. Where did you go from there? Do you remember?
Well, in Arlon, they took us to Hurricane Forest,
Yeah.
and we built. We took and made like foxholes.
Mm-hmm.
The foxholes that I'm familiar with, they were 2 men wide
Mm-hmm.
and about a little over a foot deep. And we cut these logs and made surrounded with logs. And we put tent shelters over them. And one night, well, you could sometimes you could burn gasoline in a can, enough light to see at night in there. But it was so dirty, the soot, that it was discouraging to use that. But I remember one night we went. I don't know if everybody went to bed. I guess everybody was sleeping. The next morning, all those trees were blown off. And the shells went through there while we were sleeping.
Hmm.
And my mother sent me a wrist thing with my serial number on it. I remember going out all this wood around. I went out with an axe, and the first chop I made, I broke the wrist band. The chain, I broke the chain. I still don't know how I did it, but the way I moved my hand, I broke the chain. I still have the chain somewhere, but I never wore it again. But that place was wild, I'll tell you. One time we was out on a little march, and a plane went over, a German plane, a spotter. I guess he wasn't armed. He wouldn't be armed, I don't think. Spotter. They were light plane.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed Annette. He was in the honor guard at Arlington for a while, and he was a spit and polish guy. He was a tough guy, but he was spit and polish. And when that plane went over, he dived into a ditch that had some water in it. And that could have killed him almost, because he come up, he was a mess, you know. But that was spit and polish going away that day. He didn't have it that day. But it gives me an idea of what it was like in that woods, you know. There was observation going on all the time.
Yeah.
You were under fire all the time. People were getting wounded, and some men were killed in that forest at that time, because shells were coming in there. So then this one time they had us lined up for a job, and they put us in trucks. You know, the trucks have little lights on them. You don't see them. They see the drive, but you don't see them from the air or anything. And they drove us. It was kind of chilly. It would be around Christmas time, and they drove us. It was like rain and snow and all that stuff, and cold. And they left us off. It seemed like a long way from this town that we were supposed to go into. Bernstein was the name of the town.
Mm-hmm.
That was called Hill 400.
Mm-hmm.
That's the title it got. They left us off and we had to walk into the town. And the road was rutted, wet, snow all over the place. And we kept marching and marching and marching. And who comes down the road with Colonel Rudder by himself? And he said, "See you, fella, see you." And he yelled out, one good friend of ours, he's passed away now, his name was Petty, Sergeant Petty. He says, "Where's Petty?" And he went over and shook his hand and said, "I won't be seeing you anywhere. I just got transferred to 29th Division as a regimental commander."
Mm-hmm.
So we had to go into that town, and there was a lot going on. I didn't get to see. I had to just take care of my motor section.
Mm-hmm.
But there were quite an operation going on.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose was to take this hill, observation point. The Germans had that in possession. They'd taken it and had it for a while, and they had, unbeknownst to people, they had all these tanks down in a gully from that hill, getting ready for that bulge. Nobody knew that.
Mm-hmm.
They often said, "Where did all these tanks come from?" You know, you've heard that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where they were, down in there. And they wanted to hold that hill. They didn't want anybody getting that spot to see what was going on. And we were going to get it. And I'm not going to go into that Hill 400. All I'm going to say is that was the worst of the worst. There's more casualties there for a unit than ever. And the hill was taken.
What was your role as they were trying to take Hill 400? You were with the mortar company?
My orders was to cover.
The cover. Did you do okay during that?
Well, the only thing I could say I did was observe and report.
Mm-hmm.
Thompson and I, we stayed with our assignment,
Okay.
and I came close a couple of times. The shelling was out of this world. Both sides were shelling one another. It was a terrible thing. And they, after we left, we left at nighttime. We left, and there was it was just reverse of what going there. It's so different, cold, miserable cold, and took us back to that forest where the shelling was immense there too, but out of my company of 65, there's 13 of us.
Left in your company.
Yeah. And we ride home in the truck, a cold truck, steel floor, and we said, "Oh boy, we'll get something good and warm. Our cooks are good. No matter what time it is, they'll get us food." They pull into the site. Here, they had to accidentally set the kitchen on fire. It burnt down. There was no kitchen for us when we got back here. The next day, they had replaced a lot of it, get it back on its feet again. And then they said, we're gonna have names pulled out of a helmet. Whoever gets the winning ticket gets a prize, a trip to Paris. And guess who wins the ticket? Me. I got the ticket, but don't write that down yet. I said, boy, I don't have any money. I have to borrow money, so I went all over the place borrowing money. The next day, I was in the hospital. I went up to, that night when I was in, Sergeant Elder was in there with his stinet. The two of them slept over together. And I slept over here with Thompson. Well, the next morning, Thompson was not accounted for. I learned later he came back in, but Stinnett wasn't there. He was killed. So I slept in his place. Thompson was gone, so I slept with Elder. And that night, I guess simply chills. I don't know if you ever had chills or not, but you're just frozen. You shake all over the place. And the next morning, the first sergeant threw in a pair of galoshes. You know what they are? Mm-hmm. See, I didn't have galoshes. All I had was regular shoes. I had paratrooper boots. Next morning, he threw their boots in and said, "Hey, Walsh, here's your boots. You've been wanting those size 12s. And I said, "Thanks." I was thankful because that's all I could get on my feet was the galoshes. My shoes wouldn't go on. They were swollen like that. Mm. Here I had trench foot. Mm. And so I looked outside, and there was a limb, a pretty good-sized limb. I used that as a cane. And I walked up to the medics. They were maybe a city block up. They said, "You're going to the hospital." I didn't get my combat boots or nothing, They put me on a stretcher and took me away. I was in the hospital 8 months.
8 months?
Yeah.
Really? Because of this trench foot?
Yeah.
Wow. Where was the hospital at?
The hospital, I hesitate to tell people. It's in Durham, North Carolina.
Holy cow. Let's talk a little bit about, we'll do a couple minutes here and then we'll finish up on the next tape real briefly, but you wound up with this trench foot after the battle for Hill 400. And it was so severe that you had to be evacuated,
Yeah.
right? Where did they take you to first? Do you remember? Can you recall?
They took me to Paris. I got to Paris.
Not the way you thought, though. Uh-huh. So you got to Paris, and did they take you by truck? Do you remember? Was it
I was in
truck?
a truck to Paris.
And then to where did you? What happened in Paris?
What's that?
What happened in Paris? There was it a hospital there?
Well, I was in the hospital with. They put me on an airplane
Mm-hmm.
and took me to England.
Mm-hmm.
And then from England, they put me on a troop ship.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think what the name was.
There's a troop ship back. I'm going to stop this portion here before I run out of tape, and we will finish it very briefly on the next tape, and this will conclude part 2. Mr. Walsh, so you were.